One evening, I went to the local supermarket to do some shopping. The market was usually not crowded at this time, and it was quiet and peaceful. I strolled through the aisles with my shopping basket, enjoying the serenity of the night. However, this evening, that tranquility suddenly gave way to a veil of mystery. As I was browsing the detergent and cleaning products aisle, I noticed something strange. The products on the shelves seemed to be haphazardly arranged, as if they had been tampered with by a stranger. With the faint music playing from the speakers by the radio, this scene created an eerie atmosphere. I moved closer, and when I got a bit closer, I saw the stranger. With his black jacket and gray hat, he stood out conspicuously amidst the market's calm. He had a notepad in his hand and was jotting down notes on the labels of the products on the shelves. I approached and politely asked, "Can I help you with something?" The man looked at me absent-mindedly for a moment and then smiled. "No, thank you. I'm just doing some research," he said. I didn't find this explanation comforting, and I began to worry. I continued with my own business, but the man's odd behavior started to disturb me. At that moment, I realized that my shopping cart was in another aisle, and I needed to go to the other end of the store. As I slowly moved towards the other side, I passed by the stranger. At that moment, I glanced at his notepad and saw the encrypted notes written behind the product labels. These notes didn't seem to be related to the prices or features of the products. They looked more like a code or cipher. At this point, my concern escalated, and I decided to inform one of the store employees to keep an eye on this man. I followed the man and explained the situation to a staff member. The employee was horrified and immediately called the security team. However, when we tried to follow the man, we couldn't find him. We reviewed the store's cameras, but the footage showed that the man had disappeared. When I wanted to continue shopping, I realized that my shopping cart was empty. This situation deeply unsettled me. So, I decided to leave the store without buying anything, and I never went back to that market again. I had been working at the same supermarket's cash register for years. As the final hours of the day approached, the store would usually quiet down, and my coworkers and I would finish our tasks, leave the workplace, and head home. However, that night, everything was different from the usual. As the night shift neared its end, an eerie silence filled the store. Typically, there were very few customers shopping at this hour, and as store employees, we would quickly complete our routine tasks. But that night, the atmosphere felt a bit more tense. I found myself observing my reflection in the large mirror right next to the cash register while processing transactions. At that moment, a customer appeared beside me. I felt their presence as I went about my work at the cash register. However, what caught my attention was how strangely and pallidly dressed the customer was. At first glance, I thought the customer might be tired or unwell, but something else intrigued me. Dark circles under their eyes seemed to suggest they hadn't slept for days. Their shopping basket was oddly empty. The customer approached the cash register and began speaking. Their voice trembled, and what they said was somewhat unclear. "I need to buy something," they said, but they didn't specify which items they wanted or how much they were willing to pay. I continued the transaction with growing concern, and then I asked the customer about a few basic items. However, they seemed lost, staring at the shelves with empty eyes. I completed the transaction and told them it was time to make the payment. They placed the money on the counter from their bag. Among the bills, I noticed a tattered and old piece of paper. The paper had a strange message written in twisted letters. As I examined the note, a strange shiver ran down my spine. The note read, "Leave the door ajar. They will come." My mind was spinning, and the customer's bizarre behavior was starting to disturb me. The customer took their purchase and left quietly. I, on the other hand, re-examined the note, trying to decipher the meaning of this mysterious message. I glanced at the store's entrance and noticed something strange. The door was left slightly ajar. This situation frightened me even more, and instinctively, I got up from my seat. I approached the door and looked outside. However, there was no one there, just dark and silent streets. After that incident, I anxiously waited for the end of the night shift and left work. When I got home, I couldn't help but think about the meaning of that mysterious note and couldn't forget that strange customer. Who was that person? What did the note mean? I still don't know why the door was left ajar. When the large clock in the supermarket slowly struck midnight, my coworker Lisa and I began our night inventory count. This was a routine task. We would check the shelves, count the products, and update the inventory. However, that night, things became far more complex and terrifying than we had ever anticipated. During the night inventory, the store would usually be quiet, with only the echoing footsteps of the night staff. But this night, we immediately noticed that something was amiss. The products on the shelves were haphazardly placed, as if someone had hurriedly shopped and left in a rush. Lisa and I exchanged glances and realized that we needed to investigate further. But this was just the beginning. As we moved towards the back of the store, we heard a noise, someone running hastily. The footsteps that followed us indicated that the person was very close. However, something odd was happening. The intruder shouldn't have been coming back, but the sounds were getting closer and closer. Finally, when we turned a corner, we were met with an unexpected sight. It wasn't a thief. It was our fellow cashier, Brian. Brian was approaching us, and his body resembled a rotting pile of meat. His face bore a look of madness, and he grinned at us. Lisa and I, terrified, tried to avoid getting closer to him. Brian started speaking in a strange voice. "I'm with them. They're all with me," he said, his eyes moving, as if tracking invisible entities floating around. For a moment, Lisa and I felt trapped between reality and the supernatural. We didn't know what to do in this situation. Brian started behaving even stranger. Suddenly, he dropped to the ground and began clutching his throat, making choking motions. His eyes gleamed with madness as he continued to move his hands around his throat. Lisa screamed, and I tried to intervene, but it was too late. Brian rolled his eyes and collapsed to the ground. His face was pale, and he looked even more emaciated than an elderly man. In a state of panic, we immediately called the police and waited for the emergency services. However, Brian's condition was so severe that we couldn't save him. Somehow, it appeared as though he had been strangled, but there was no one else around. The police investigated the incident, but there were no suspects or leads. Additionally, the security cameras in the store were not functioning, and no evidence could be found. Brian's sudden madness and death left us all in shock. After this incident, the store staff discussed the strange occurrences we had never experienced before. Brian's bizarre behavior and death remained a mystery, and the town talked about it for a long time. Rumors circulated that invisible entities had possessed him, but the true cause was never revealed. This event turned one night of routine inventory into a haunting memory that none of us would ever forget.